Okay, hello. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So good morning. Um, my name is Al Shibo, and I'll be your host for this morning's session. And we have an exciting talk from Paylocity. But before, I want to remind you that this is an hour-long session, and it will be recorded, which will and also will be available later. Also, CEs will be automatically applied for uh, to you based on your attendance. Just make sure you put your license number when you register, because that's the only way that we can track you. Also, if you have questions, there's a chat option at the bottom of your screen, and I'm going to be monitoring the chats just to make sure that if you have questions that we will be able to ask Robin. And as far as housekeeping, bathrooms are in your house. And if you take your phone and you're on video, make sure that you have it, the video is turned off. So anyhow, that's supposed to be funny. Thank you very much. All right. But before this session begins, I would like to hear we would like to hear a word from our sponsors for the session. Without them, none of this would be possible. First sponsor that we have is Trey Tompkins with Admin America. Take it away, Trey.
Oh, thank you very much, Al, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with all of you, even virtually at this point. Thanks for participating in the summit this year and the forum. It's at interesting times, of course. At Admin America, we've got approximately 30 employees working remotely at this point. So I'm actually really excited about Robin and Aaron's presentation because it's, really speaks to the future of our business as well. With regards to COVID-19, it's impacted our business in two really specific ways that I think are important to most of you. First, unfortunately, there have just been a huge number of COBRA qualifying events, and we've had to assist our clients with, transitioning a lot of employees through furloughs or, temporary layoffs or permanent layoffs. And I think our team's done a really good job with that. With regards to COBRA, it's really proven out to be a strength of Admin America's. The other that I think is important for most of you is those of you with clients with Section 125 plans, working with the COVID-19 related relief that the IRS and the DOL announced back in May, and helping our clients with their special grace periods and their mid-year changes of elections. That's been a really good process for a lot of our clients, and we'd love to help you with that if your clients need that as well. Lastly, about our services, I would just mention now's the time of the year where we're ramping up for ACA employer reporting, and most of us thought that would be gone by now, but it's still around, and clients still have to do it every winter. And if your clients need any help with that, we would love to talk to you about providing that reporting service. We've been doing it now for 5 years, and we have a really good process. The last thing I just want to mention is our longest tenured employee, Linda Bentley, is retiring next week. She's been with Admin America for 27 years. A lot of you know her. And so if any of you know her personally, I think it'd be great if you might send her a little note to congratulate her on her retirement. We're going to miss her. So things are really changing around Admin America. That's all I got, Al.
Thank you, Trey. I appreciate it. You did great with 2 minutes. The next sponsor is Brian Freeman with Habersham Funding. Take it away, Brian.
Thanks, Al. Good morning, everyone. Likewise to Trey, I'm appreciative to be able to sponsor this very innovative session. It's interesting that we're able to do this during COVID, and we found out that we don't have to work in our office. So I hope we all come away with some new ideas that we can apply to our clients. And hopefully the one I'm about to tell you is a new idea. And it has to do with COBRA and life settlements. Many of you know what life settlements are, that they're the purchase of a life insurance policy at a discount from the face amount. But you may not know that it doesn't just apply to individual policies, term, universal life, whole life, and other types of individual policies, but can also apply to employee benefits, to group life insurance. And frankly, what we've seen is that employee benefits advisors who are working with their clients are finding that when they are able to help a employee who qualifies to do a life settlement with their group life insurance policy, that it really makes them a hero at the group. It's unusual, it's different, it's something they've never heard of before, it sets you apart, and it really helps the employee. And we started many years ago calling this our COBRA solution, because so many people, of course, were concerned when they left their job that they wouldn't be able to pay their health insurance premium. And even if they had disability, if they were going out on disability, they wouldn't have money to pay their health insurance premium. So we started buying group life insurance policies so that people would have the money to pay for their health insurance premiums. How do people qualify? Typically, when their life expectancy is less. Now, that's not always true, but both seniors who are leaving their work, maybe retiring, and those who have a terminal or near terminal illness may qualify, but the policies from group life providers to group life providers differ. So you need to check with us on every case that you think is a possibility when you see someone who's leaving that may have a shortened life expectancy. Thank you again for the opportunity to sponsor, Al.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. And please go to these sponsors. You go to, if you click on the sponsors tab and click on their information, we really appreciate you visiting their site. Now I'm going to introduce to you Robin. And again, remember that this is going to be recorded and CE credits will be available. So Robin is a graduate from the University of Memphis. So it's go Tigers. I'm an LSU Tiger, as you can see over my shoulder. But anyhow, you're still a Tiger. So she has a Bachelor of Organizational Leadership. She's been working in the HR payroll industry for about 10 years. And her main focus has been helping clients and working with benefit brokers and financial advisors. She's achieved the President's Club rankings, which puts her in the top 5% for 6 times. So she's a go-getter. So I present to you Robin Kiser.
Thanks so much, Al, for introducing me, and as well, sponsors. Thank you for everything you do for the organization. I know so many individuals get so much out of this program, and you know, it's a pleasure to be here with everyone today. Not only did I graduate from University of Memphis, but I do work for Paylocity here in the Atlanta market. And you know, Paylocity is an HR payroll technology company that is really known just for our integrations and our strategy of working with benefit brokers and financial advisors across the United States. And you know, not only do we have great technology, but we're backed by a 97% client retention rate. And I know I said this earlier, but it's a quantum leap in the industry. You cannot find that type of client retention rate in our world. So, you know, throughout the last couple years, we've really seen, you know, benefits and payroll and HR collide, and our worlds have kind of became one. You know, so I'll share some of the industry trends that we're seeing around, you know, remote workforce today. And then at the end, I'll share, you know, how Paylocity can help individuals like yourself. So I do have a guest with me today. So Aaron, I'll pass it over to you and let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Clark. I'm a director of sales with Paylocity. Al, I was actually born and raised in Louisiana, so go Tigers. You can't tell. Yeah, exactly. We're not going to play neck or anything. We don't want to get anybody in trouble, which is a song for LSU fans if you know that one. But so The reason I didn't go to LSU is you can't tell from this, but I'm actually abnormally tall. I'm 6'9", so that's usually what I plan on when I talk in person is just leering over you. But we'll have to adjust here in this virtual world. But I played basketball at a smaller college in Georgia. But yeah, I've been with Paylocity for about 3.5 years now. Previous to that, was with another payroll provider for a little over 7. So similar to Robin, been in the industry for about 11 years now. I'm really excited. Robin kind of asked me if I could join and kind of talk through some stuff. And this is really exciting for us, truthfully, because it's what we're seeing every day, what we're talking about with clients, and that there's this new world out there with COVID. And I think what we're discovering is that it's not necessarily a quantum leap that people had never heard of remote work, but it really just fast forwarded the market into this world of remote work. So it's something that we're really passionate about at Paylocity, and we'll talk through some of the trends kind of in general, and then also some of the things that you can talk to either with your own businesses or with your clients.
Perfect. All right, so Aaron talked a little bit about, we at Paylocity were already talking about the remote workplace way before COVID hit. But as COVID hit, we obviously seen that extremely increase. But the workplace was already, evolving around. And so, what did that look like? And, where are we at right now? Statistics are showing 4.3 million remote workers in the United States. And so that makes up 3.2% of the entire workforce. The same report also says that 40% of companies actually offer remote work style as an option, whereas 5 years ago, they didn't at all. And so this is just a clear indicator that we cannot ignore that it's among us, right? It's now time for us to start making this transition into how do we cater to this more remote workplace. 140% of people work from home since 2005. That's the increase that we've seen. That's huge. As well as we're starting to see that working from home expanded 10 times faster than any other area in the workplace. And that full-time employees are 4 times likely to be offered remote workplaces than part-timers. So you can understand how attractive that is. And if you're going through a hiring process, you're wanting to recruit good talent. The other thing is that 86% of people feel that working remotely actually is less stressful. And so there were surveys that were sent out, and as they were answering these surveys, 77% said that it allowed for better general health. And why was that? Because they were able to have time to have a better diet. They were able to do more exercise, right? Not only that, they were also able to have that general healthier lifestyle. And so those are the statistics behind why work has now changed where it's being done. And the number one benefit that any company, any HR leader, any controller can offer is this remote work style. Not only have we seen a change just in a remote work style, but we've also seen a change in the gig impact. Right. So I don't know how many people know, what a gig job is. I, had to kind of research it, but we have tons of them now, right? You see Uber apps, you see Uber Eats, you can have your dog walked straight from an app. You see a lot more contractors. But a gig is basically a side hustle. And so 40% of the US workforce is employed by more of a gig experience. And that's really impacting 2 generations. And that's the millennials and the Gen X workers. 2/3 of them are practicing a side hustle. When Aaron and I were reviewing this, Aaron's like, yes, I used to manage someone that, like he said, he always had to have a side hustle, right? So I'm sure many of you have seen that you've had a side hustle employee, or even worked with a company that have employees that offer that. So in 2019, there was a survey done, and there was 13,500 people that responded to this survey. And they found that 49% of people are actually planning on leaving their job within 2 years. Not only that, 61% do gig work on the side. And surprisingly, 84% of millennials and 81% of Gen X workers will actually take that gig job today if they paid more. And then another stat that we've seen is that 35% of companies now operate more in a team environment. And so this is a better way to build culture, right? To drive participation. It's a better way to have more talent, skills, and goals that are shared across in a complete organization. And so that also changed the way people needed to lead within their organization. It wasn't really about hiring for, all the way through to retirement. Now it's really about catering to that particular employee's maybe what they're great at, maybe giving them more mentorship roles, more project alignment, just management on those particular projects, because we're not really seeing employees stay for companies, until retirement. And the last little stat and the last little piece I want to share around this gig impact is that, 8% of the workers are actually saying that the average full-time worker and full-time workers today worry more about income, whereas gig workers, they're not that worried about income, right? They're worried more about happiness and enjoying the quality of life. So I'm going to open it up. We've got a chat feature. If you hover down to the bottom of your screen here, you'll be able to send chats through. And I'd like to just hear, as people have met with, potential clients or clients, especially during COVID, what type of work have you seen? How are they employing employees? Is it A, more of a remote work style? B, flexible assignments? Have you seen any gig roles? And then D, has there been anything else that you've seen? Maybe rotating schedules? It looks like we've got some chats coming through. So it looks like Al said that majority of it has been remote work. Has anybody else seen anything else? I know personally we have been able to see a lot of rotating schedules, people coming in and maybe 10 people in the office at a time. We also have B, flexible assignments. So we're living this. It looks like Gina said about 50% has been the remote work style. So as Aaron mentioned earlier, COVID really pushed us into this modern workplace. Paylocity had been, speaking about modern workplace for years, but, with COVID, it's allowed us to see how much we've got to change. And so, the next slide really goes into being able to rethink business results. And so I'm going to pass it over to Aaron.
Aaron, I appreciate it. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. That's it. And that's interesting, Gene. I just saw your comment there. 50 met with employees during enrollment. They all wore masks, and we met with less people each time. And you're exactly right. That's what we're seeing. And we're actually going to get into a little bit at the end here, kind of what some of the technology, what piece of technology are available to help you in things like open enrollment and even other HR areas. So I appreciate that feedback. Feel free to throw things in the chat even while we're talking. You're not going to interrupt Robin or I. We want to make this as interactive as possible, so please continue to do that. So to Robin's point, really, that in the past, you talk about organizations were run as hierarchical command systems. You've got that kind of it's hierarchy. We go into the office. I know Trey talked about earlier that they were usually going 4 or 5 days a week into the office, and that's just not really the reality anymore. And now we're in the information age is increasing the demand for work-life balance and satisfaction. So there's a huge push now to create work environments that employees are wanting, which is not the 9 to 5 in the office with an hour-and-a-half commute. It's giving them the flexibility to do some things that they want to be able to do from home to work in their life and almost to shift that balance from living to work to just work to live. That makes sense. So it's now our lives are no longer necessarily 100% around our jobs. Next slide. So there's a couple of examples of companies that are really doing a good job of this, and there's kind of some new ways to work. So one of the examples is Google. Google, what they've made is their company is 20% of their entire they give 20% to side projects. So when you think about 20%, that's 1 day a week that they're telling their employees, do whatever you want. Do something you're passionate about, do something that you really love, that isn't necessarily part of your normal job description, your normal job. So they're giving them a day a week to not just knock off and go play golf, but to focus on a project with their jobs that allows them, it's something they're passionate about. And so you think, okay, maybe this will work, maybe this won't. But just to give you an example of some of the results that have come from it, these are all examples of things that have come as a result of that 20% side project at Google. Gmail came up with, was a result of it. So was Slack. Those things all came from side projects of people that were working at Google, and then outside of it, both Groupon and even Twitter, which is one of the biggest social media platforms in the world, all were results of side projects. They weren't part of, the guy who created Twitter did not set out to create Twitter. It was a side project that he was working on that just grew and gained traction and moved on. So it's something that you even talk about with your clients as, hey, give your employees options to kind of have some, almost a mental break or a passion break or whatever you want to call it, to allow them to work on things that aren't necessarily in their normal job description. I think you'll be surprised at some of the results that you get. Another thing with Dropbox is that they have flex schedules and then no meeting Wednesdays. They also have something they call Hack Week, which allows their people to go back to almost their coding days and really work in, again, similar to what what Google does. And it just allows them to kind of do their own thing for an entire week and say, figure out something, work with a buddy, do something that you're passionate about. And then in their most recent Hack Week, they talk about how they came up with what's called Project Infinite, which I'll save you the technical jargon. What it does is it allows people basically, it increased Dropbox's ability, what they can do without actually tapping into your hard drive. So it really opened up an entire new product line and market for Dropbox. That was all a result of letting kind of hackers do their thing and just have fun with it. All of a sudden they kind of fell into this and you're going, wow, this is something that we can really utilize and even just monetize now for our employee base. So while these things on their face are employee engagement tools first and foremost, and they are, that's what they're designed to do, we've also found that they tend to have good results from a product standpoint as well and from a revenue standpoint. And when you go to Gap, Gap really changed. They have a motto they call GPS, which is grow, perform, succeed. And instead of those kind of arduous annual performance reviews, which we've probably all done or either given or had to give in our careers, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know about y'all, I can barely remember what I had for lunch yesterday, much less what one of my employees did 8 months ago, for a performance review. So it's kind of one of those things that is, you've got to be able to have some flexibility there. So Gap is going to, instead of having the annual reviews, to doing the real-time feedback. So they said, one of their district managers said, we want to win daily. We want to give our employees the feedback so they can win daily. And what we found in the marketplace is many times the thing that keeps this from happening is not having a tool. Again, there are other tools. Robin and I will kind of give you examples of things with Paylocity, not necessarily as a sales pitch, but just it's because it's what we're most familiar with. And so we can give you some examples. We have a tool called Performance Journaling, which does exactly that, which allows managers to give real-time feedback to the employees. The employee can speak back to them, and it really has this mindset in its architecture of that we're not going to just save all of our feedback up for this one time a year and throw up a bunch of information on them. We want to give the employee timely feedback so they can win every single day and continue to get better and more importantly, feel engaged. Next slide. So with this results-oriented work, this is what really goes to what Rob was talking about with this gig economy. And it's not necessarily just, hey, you're going to work 9 to 5 and you gotta just work 9 to 5 and do it. It's more, we're shifting more towards, hey, here's a task or here's something we need to get done. And however you need to get that done, it's up to you. So it may be that I'm a night owl and I'd rather work from 10:30 to 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm very, very productive during those times, just because it's the way I like to do it. Now, that was before kids. I no longer have that ability to stay up that late, so you can kiss that goodbye. But before kids, I would stay up all night and work, and that was when I was most productive. That's not my regular 9 to 5, but I was able to be, and that's where we're going towards. It'd be, I'd wake up in the morning and see all this work that got done overnight. Again, I can speak to that at Paylocity, and I'm sure most of you are all seeing clients who have kids right now who are doing homeschool. I know Trey talked about that. Well, if they're in high school, they can kind of, even middle school, they can probably take care of themselves. But with elementary school kids, you've got a lot of parents who are now faced with, I have to help teach my kid during work hours. So what do you do with that? Well, let's make it a results-oriented work. Hey, look, here's what we need you to get done. If you can do it from 6 a.m. in the morning, great. If you can do it at 8 o'clock at night, that's fine too. And really focusing on the outcome more so than the method of which they're doing it, and like putting them in a box. So it's freeing them from the box of how they do it and just letting them know, hey, this is the work that we need to get done. And you're going to see that as a common theme throughout what we're talking about. Again, in this gig economy and these gig jobs, it's more results-based, more so than this kind of old school hierarchical employment box that we're familiar with. I'll tell you another couple examples real quick, just so you're, if you're looking for ideas or things to do for this. Progressive Insurance, they're not the only, the three companies we talked about aren't the only ones that are doing it. Progressive Insurance and a company called Newhouse, what they're doing is they've gotten almost completely away from cubicles. So they're creating these kind of free-flowing workspaces. So it may be benches with tiered benches with pillows and things on them, so employees can go and relax and work while they're doing that, as opposed to being stuck in their box. And again, all of these things are just different ideas, all going for the same result, which is engaging employees, making them feel more empowered to do their job, as opposed to being kind of a taskmaster and really requiring them to do it a certain way. Next slide. So I guess before we go to the future work, I know we're going to click it over to Robin. Were there any questions or comments on any of those things in terms of, and I'd actually like to hear, what are some things that you're seeing with either with your own companies or with clients that they're doing that to really give kind of out of the box things and to really empower their employees a little bit more? You can just throw it in the chat. All right, this would be normally where I would stand over you to make sure that you guys interact a little bit. So help us out here and maybe throw something in the chat as far as something that you're seeing. Whether it's, there we go. I think that was, okay, so Al said he's doing most of the sales via Zoom. And that's exactly right, because you're not, and it saves, I can tell you, speak from example, I also cover the state of Arkansas, and I've got a rep who said to me, he goes, this actually forced me into being better. He was driving, really probably 30 hours a week in drive time, driving all around. And instead now we can have twice as many meetings because they're doing them over Zoom. So you can be a lot more efficient. And he feels like he's got a lot of work-life balance back by not having to do so much commuting. So that's a really good example. Macy, sounds like you're doing the same thing. I know, or Macy talked about doing meetings over Team. Gina Grantham kind of commented she's working after hours most time. So been home working since March. So we're seeing, you're exactly right. We're seeing a lot of that after hours work and just really empowering people to get their job done when they need to. All right, well, Robin, I'll let you take it from here and talk through the future of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Where does this really take us now, right? So where are the clients that you're going to be speaking to, the companies that you work with, what is going to happen, next? And so, what we're really starting to look at is that remote work, right? So there's really no better time than now for these company leaders or these HR leaders, to start introducing this flexible work options as an organization. Right, so because we're going to see, and they're going to see, and these are things that you can talk to them about, right? You're going to see increased productivity. You're going to see employee higher satisfaction. One of the biggest things is that people aren't all of a sudden always sick or, going on vacation as much and out of the office, right? So PTO is going to go down. There's also going to be able that they can start to hire and expand their talent pool. Right, because of drive time, we no longer have to worry about only being able to hire from a certain city. You can now open up and maybe even hire out of a state across the United States to fill that need that they have at the organization. So flexible assignments, and I know I saw this in one of the chats, and we've talked about it, especially COVID hitting. There's been a lot of times where now we really need to have these modern work arrangements that really stray away from that, 8 to 5 time. And so it's giving the employees the flexibility to choose a schedule that meets their personal lifestyle. and also maybe obligations. So, and this could include flex time, part-time, and even flexible locations. Maybe they can work from anywhere. I know I've seen even members of this group, as well as you know, other members, benefit brokers. I saw a lot of people working from Florida, right? Kids were out of school. They were doing virtual learning. And so, you know, that was being able to allow us, you know, to be able to see how you can work from anywhere, as well as take care of maybe homeschooling the kids. You know, the next thing that we really started to think about, and this was super interesting to me, you know, it's really allowing us and speaking to your HR leaders in your companies about them creating a gig economy internally. And so, you know, this is one example that we had at Paylocity is one of our national sales support team members. She did makeup on the side, and we were able to hire her internally as we started to push out these virtual, you know, meetings and virtual trainings. She would do the makeup for the presenters before we would broadcast those trainings. I have a personal story. I went to school to be a teacher, never in a million years thought this is what I would be doing. And it's a passion of mine. I love developing people, working with people, and Paylocity's allowed me to be a part of a mentor program where I mentor reps, as well as they've allowed me to create and develop trainings that I've given, you know, to the organization here at Paylocity. So you could even start to ask your HR leaders, company owners, have they thought about this? You know, I meet with around 3 to 4, you know, members, you know, or companies a week, as well as Aaron manages about 5 other people here in Atlanta. They all meet with that many as well. I can tell you that not a lot of HR have thought about this. How do they retain that top talent? Well, one of the ways is letting them be passionate about what they do, right? Getting to know them outside. What are their hobbies? What are their skills? Just getting to know them outside of that corporate lifestyle. And so what is the outcome of all of this, right? So one, we start to collaborate as an organization cross departments, really fostering this trust and this innovation as an organization. The second thing is maybe productivity. Employees really start to thrive because they have a choice. They can actually leverage their strengths within the work environment. And then that flexibility piece, people start to have that balance that they've always earned for. Right? They start to be able to focus more, and they start to be able to improve those efficiencies that, you know, really leads the company making more money. And so I'm going to turn it over to Aaron and, you know, let him kind of share a little bit around what does the policies look like for some of these companies that you may be meeting with.
Yeah, so this is where it gets to a little bit of the womp womp, you know, policies, HR. It's one of those kind of legal things that we got to go through. So, Rob, you click to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit about this. It's for those of you, and somebody you may be able to raise your hand. Everyone's probably had clients. Who's had clients? You can raise your hand in the chat that have had the whole 1099 versus W-2 employee debate. Is that familiar with anybody? Yes, no, maybe so.
See, I'll
Yes. So, you know, this gig, the gig economy, these gig policies, quite frankly, are very similar. There's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of similarities to that 1099 because those gig roles are usually contractor roles, which is, you know, is a 1099. So there are things like when we'll go into a little bit of the gig stuff, but kind of before we even get to that, with some of the remote policies, a lot of times there are things that you want to make sure that you have set in your employee handbooks, and you can relaunch that, but it may be, okay, in order to work remote, you have to be here at least 6 months or a year. Or, hey, you know, you can work whenever, but, you know, you may not have to be available 9 to 5, but you definitely have to be available from 10 to 12 because that's a high volume time for us, or whatever it may be. So a lot of times, you know, in many cases, it's not just a free-for-all when we're doing these things, and you want to be able to have some of the policies in place to make sure that you're keeping some guidelines in there. So again, making sure there's there is some level of productivity guidelines. It's not just do whatever you want. Even, you know, rightful termination, depending on what state they are, if you're a right to work state, there can be some things there. Also, as people work from home, one of the biggest questions that we get a lot of times is based around cybersecurity. So whether that is, you got, whether it's implementing a VPN system, so they have to be on that network or whatever it may be, they're just things that you want to make sure that you're keeping in the back of your mind and that you're reviewing with your clients, because as these remote opportunities pop up, you now have some new challenges with some of these things in the left that we've never had when you went into an office. When you went into an office, the equipment probably stayed there. You didn't have to worry about that. You had IT support that was on site that you didn't have to call or whatever it is. And then there wasn't any question about availability because they were there. So a lot of these things you want to make sure that you have policies written around. Any questions on that, on the remote policies? I think that a lot of times is more self-explanatory for most folks. Good. So some of these gig policies, a lot of these things are where we're getting into some more gray areas. So compensation. So the gig policies, this is one of the things, they may or may not be minimum wage jobs. So someone may accept a gig role that pays less than minimum wage, and that's okay because they're accepting it on a contract basis. And so they're agreeing to do the work. They may get it done in a certain amount of time, but you're not requiring that time. So therefore they could theoretically be working for less than minimum wage. So, but it's something you want to keep an eye on and ideally pay above that, but it's not necessarily mandatory. Insurance is another big hurdle for a lot of people who are taking gig jobs, because insurance is hard to get as an individual. I know I'm preaching to the choir here when I talk about that, but as you know, it can be very difficult. So there are some things and some options that we're seeing with certain companies that are offering, with these maybe some gig roles that they're actually putting them as employees so that they can get insurance. Same thing with productivity guidelines, rightful terminations, all those work conditions. So you want to, it can be remote, and there's a lot of things there, but what we're seeing, the big kind of turn is that because a lot of these gig roles are happening, that employers, are actually offering these gig roles but they're treating them as W-2 employees. So they can take advantage of benefits and things like that. And as you know, you can build constraints around employees, whether it's carve-outs or things like that when it goes to health insurance. Any questions on those things? I know it's kind of, again, boring policies and procedures, but they're important things for our clients to be aware of.
Yeah, Al had actually shared the majority of his clients that he meets with, they are out of compliance in these areas. So it's definitely a focus right now.
Yeah, and 1099s, a lot of times, Al, like to kind of go, not to go down a rabbit hole there. I know Al talked about the 1099 compliance. There's those kind of three magic things that are, again, it's all gray area, but are they using your equipment at all, which can include phone systems, uniforms, anything like that? Are they on a required schedule? You're requiring them to come in at a certain time, and are they under your direct supervision? So are you telling them exactly the way to do it? And if they say yes to any of those three, they are probably more than likely should be considered a W-2 employee. Again, there's fine lines and gray areas in there that you can kind of talk through an individual basis, but we always like to advise clients to kind of really abide by those three as much as possible. In terms, I know Al said a recommended confidentiality agreement, that's an option, especially with some of these gig things, and if you're working with someone on a contract basis, you don't want them taking your intellectual property to a competitor if they're only on a contract basis. So it's definitely a good idea and something to have an NDA confidentiality agreement when you have these people coming on a contract basis. A great point. So, again, the other thing is to really evaluate some of these benefit offerings. This really plays off kind of the last point there, is that even if you maybe not necessarily can offer them health insurance, employers can still offer other benefits that are maybe kind of a soft benefit, so to speak, for employees or even for gig workers. I know an example of this at Paylocity is we're actually offering something we call on-demand pay. And what this does is it allows employees to only take time that they've worked. So if they're an hourly worker, if their time's been approved, if their pay's been approved, they can actually go in through mobile application and get that money. And depending on if it's either after or before 12 o'clock, they'll either get it same day or the next day. And in our case, Paylocity, we actually front the money, and then when the employer actually processes payroll, we just true that up. So the employer does not have to worry about multiple bank accounts or reconciling that. They don't have to worry about processing anything, a loan or anything from an employee. The employee can just go on their own, get the cash that they need, and for whatever purpose they have. So it's really, again, that's an example of kind of a soft employee benefit. It's not costing the employee anything. It's not adding any undue or added pressure to a payroll or HR administrator, but it's giving an employee access to their cash a little bit earlier. I can tell you an example in my real life that I used it. Payday was Friday. My wife and I try to budget pretty tightly. Well, I had a credit card due on Wednesday. I pulled a little bit of money to cover the credit card, so I didn't have to pull it out of savings to do that. The money was in my account. Credit card was paid. Life was good. I didn't have to notify anybody. I was able to make that transaction. It took all of 15 seconds. So just some things, whether it's, again, reimbursement of office equipment, flexible hours, on-demand pay. There are a lot of different creative options that you can do for benefit offerings. Are there any that you have seen or that maybe you've thought of that you're offering with your clients or that you are offering? You can put those in the chat in terms of different and creative benefit offerings that aren't outside of maybe health insurance. Anything? All right, everybody's being shy today. Well, we can go, Robin, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. I think we've got a poll.
Absolutely. So I sent a chat. It was actually to Al. That meant it to be to all panelists, but school loan payoffs. That's been, a huge one that I've started to see. A lot of companies wanting in their benefits offering. I think the next slide, and hopefully this is giving y'all ideas to be able to share with your HR leaders. As you're out there meeting with clients, this gives you other topics to talk about other than just benefits, because that HR leader, that controller, that CFO, their world is a lot bigger than just benefits. So I've got one more poll question you can enter into the chat. So as we start to talk about benefit offering or policy changes, what have you started to do with your clients? Or what have you seen your clients do for their workforce to become more mobile? A, maybe video conferencing. B, obtaining a new enrollment software. Maybe C, starting a new flexible PTO sick time. Maybe D, offering FSA dependent care for the first time. Anything else, or what are you seeing out there the most? A, B, C, D? Video conference, right? Everyone's using Teams, everyone's using Zoom. So what does that actually mean, for us from a leveraging technology standpoint? And so this is actually going to be geared more towards people like yourself. So Aaron, I'm going to let you kind of speak to the first two, this is technology geared more to, ancillary partners, benefit brokers, or advisors.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go ahead and click to the next slide. So these are some technology in certain areas. So first one is, you talk about the future of the systems and kind of what the point of these are and where these are going. And it's really, focused on productivity, but the big thing is mobile now. I mean, most employees are wanting, especially with your millennials, Gen Z, it's really mobile forward, highly agile kind of technology they're needing to. You're always going to have some of I know we still have a lot of baby boomers in the workforce, but even now, even a lot of baby boomers are getting much more comfortable being on their phones, having access to technology and working that. So it's really having technology that gives you the best of both worlds, that gives you the mobile option, but then also gives some things on a computer. It also, more importantly, what we're seeing is it's got to have predictive functionality with push notifications. If people have to go in and log in, they're probably not going to do it. They're getting pinged and get hit with things. So if you're not having alerts and suggestions coming up, then it's probably, you're not going to get the engagement that you're really looking for. So, Robin, next slide. One of the first things is, is benefit administration. These are some screenshots of our Paylocity benefit administration, but I know Al, you mentioned Employee Navigator. There are tons of options out there, right? From eCentral to Employee Navigator to Plan Source. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? In Paylocity, we have our own branded one, but really having electronic benefit administration. I think it was Gina earlier that mentioned that she went in and kind of did a in-person one and people were in masks, but she's, seeing less of, fewer and fewer people actually show up to those in-person enrollment meetings now. So having an electronic onboarding and election tool is really becoming something that I feel, and maybe I welcome some feedback, but it seems to be something that's becoming much more of a requirement than a nice to have, so to speak. So helps streamline for the employees. It also helps the payroll and HR administrators without having to key deductions back in. The information just flows right into payroll. So everybody kind of wins, and it really will, it frees up, both sides of the equation. Next slide. The other is HSA, FSA. Again, there are other options out there. This is our Paylocity branded one in particular, which allows an employee, and I know before we use our own software at Paylocity. Before we had this, I had a red card in my wallet that I'd never used, and I had an 800 number that I could call, but quite frankly, it didn't get used very much. Now that we have the ability to have this on the mobile application, so the employee can actually click on it, they can see their balances. You can also file a claim directly from your phone. I'll give a real world example. I mentioned I have a 2-year-old daughter. I went and picked her up from daycare for her school. I paid the bill. They gave me a receipt. I actually took a picture of the receipt, filed the claim, and did it. And it took all of, I think, just under about 90 seconds once they gave me their EIN number, clicked submit, and the money was in my account the next pay period to file an HSA or an FSA dependent care claim. I can tell you I had to do those before, and it was at least a 30 to 45-minute process for us to call and do different things and scan a receipt, email it over, all those kind of things. Now we're giving the employees the ability to simply take pictures from their phone and file claims that way if they'd like to see it. And they can also obviously view the status of those claims once they've been submitted. Robin, I think you're going to take the next couple tools.
Yeah, so Paylocity has a survey tool built within the software. And so this survey tool, companies can build the surveys around anything. I normally suggest them to build it around benefits, open enrollment. A lot of times we will see them push things out like, hey, how did open enrollment go? What do you wish you would have saw different? And if you run into a Paylocity client, let them know that they can do this. Maybe they don't realize that they can even use the software this way. We have tons of templates already built within the survey tool. They really help to build engagement. We just released where they can be done through the cell phone. I knock mine out in like 1 minute now, since they're able to be done directly from the cell phone device. I see companies, send them at different times of the year to see if they've improved in that area. But they can also create their own right from scratch if they don't want to use our templates. We can give the benefit broker or financial advisor access to those survey results as well, because we can provide a security role solution. Community is a huge feature that really took off. We offer it at no cost. We've had it for a while now, but with COVID, crazy amount of clients were telling me, Robin, I'm using Community like I never have been before. Community is really done. It allows for companies to access it by desktop or by mobile device. And it gives a quick way for employees to go in and just be involved with the discussion. It's ideal for lighter topics, but you can also use it for more serious topics. When someone posts a notification, you can actually send it out to the cell phones. If you want to turn that off, if it's a lighter topic, you could just have basically like a social media where it pops like a red flag and says you have a notification. Kind of similar to what our chat did here today with Zoom. It also allows for employees to be able to see, how their opinion compares to other coworkers. And there's even a polling feature in there. So an example of this is, an HR leader could push out and say, hey, don't forget open enrollment starts tomorrow. Or it could even be, hey, don't forget open enrollment closes tomorrow at 5. Those are some of the ways that we've seen it used. And then last but not least is our benefit portal that is built for people like yourself. This portal gives you that security role-based solution to your Paylocity clients. Now, we actually flew a ton of benefit brokers across the United States up to Las Vegas. They built this. Paylocity did not build this. The recommendations came directly from people like yourself, and there's tons of things in this broker portal around reports around ACA, around eligibility, new hires, recent terms, right? And so this is actually going to give you the access to be able to have better insights and information, with your clients, and be able to be more of a resource to them. If you're doing quarterly meetings or, when it comes time for open enrollment, you'll be able to have information to their generation rates, right from their analytic reporting. But we offer this enrollment tool or this benefit broker portal at no cost, And if you already have Paylocity clients, we can get you signed up, with that pretty quickly. It takes us about, no more than 24 hours to turn it around. I've had a couple clients that have been, they needed access. The client wasn't being responsive. I was able to go in, give them access, and they were able to get, some of that census information, right over to those ancillary partners.
The benefits form.
Is it good?
It's on the first session right now.
Okay, took care of that. All right.
And if everyone could just make sure to go on mute. I don't know if I can mute from my side. But Al sent a really good question here. He was like, hey, do you offer health insurance? Do you compete with brokers? 100% we do not. Our business model is made to be able to partner with benefit brokers, to be able to go up against the Paychecks and the ADPs of the world that are offering those benefit solutions. We do not offer any type of health benefits or 401k. We just build integration with whatever platform or whatever carrier that you're using. Does that help answer, Al? Perfect. So, that's it. I hope we gave y'all some great insight to be able to go out with some industry trends that are happening right now, to have some better conversations, as well as how our software can help some of your clients. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out to Aaron or myself. But thanks so much for the time today.
Well, thank you, Robin and Aaron. Excellent presentation. You covered a lot of good information, so thank you. I'm checking the chat, and nobody has any questions. Is everybody awake out there? Just kidding. But anyhow, just wanted to encourage you again to visit the sponsors. And the way to go to the sponsors is you click on the sponsor, on the forum sponsor tab, and click directly to that, on that company. And so I know that Robin will be happy to chat with you, or one of her cohorts. And so anyhow, just make sure that you go and visit them and establish some kind of relationship with them. With that, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this off, and I appreciate again the talk. Thank you for Trey with Admin America and Haversham Consulting. So with that, the next session is at 11 o'clock. No, I'm sorry, 11:30. But from 11 to 11:30, you can do a virtual trade show and trade show meeting. So thank you again, and we will see you next time. Bye.